Hi, I'm Sandra and I'm the host of Experts Cocktail, a series of interviews with sales experts. In these videos, I'd like to show you the people behind successful lead generation or marketing agencies. We're meeting to chat about their struggles and successes and more, while enjoying a drink together. In this episode, I'm chatting with Miles Veth, CEO and founder of Veth Group, one of our partners at Woodpecker Experts Program. Let's start. So let's start with talking a bit about your background. When and why did you start working in sales?
So I wrote a bunch of letters to famous people in college. Yes, I also have one of these to match you. And basically, I got advice from a lot of successful business leaders that they thought I'd be effective at selling. So I made the leap and I went to go work at a big tech company in sales.
What company was it?
It's called EMC. It's a data storage company that got purchased by Dell. So together they're one of the biggest companies in the world.
And what did you do there? Did you start from the bottom up?
Yeah, just the sales leadership program. So kind of traditional SDR up to becoming your own account manager.
What made you want to start on your own and build your own company, your own agency?
Well, it wasn't a perfect path for me, but I had a lot of people reaching out to me on LinkedIn. So I talked to Gary Vaynerchuk. He was kind enough to set up a call with me and another of my friends. And he talked through using LinkedIn and Medium to build your brand. At the time, I was working for my dad. And basically from that discussion, I started to produce a lot of content on LinkedIn around sales and the experiments I was running for our family IT business. And eventually I had a lot of people reaching out to me saying things like, "You're changing my life, your content's made a big difference for me." Just a lot of those types of messages. So I started to realize that the age of 25, that was rare that you could actually be like influencing people's lives that dramatically. So I made the leap to trying to make it a business, and it's definitely been up and down, but really grateful I made that decision.
I was wondering, when you first started out, what was the most challenging part of building the business?
I would say probably just like anyone, if you're not using outside debt or outside venture capital, which I wasn't, I think it's just like financing it, because you go from having a job to having very little money. And it takes a while to get paid, or especially if you're working with bigger companies, it might be net 60 or net 90. In the very beginning, I think it's just hard to get the cash flow going.
And did you have any mentors?
Yes, my dad's an entrepreneur of 30 years, so he was definitely very helpful, both in providing some of the infrastructure like office space or accounting help or things, as well as the emotional side. But there have been a lot. Everyone from one of the former leaders at Cartier, the jewelry company, to one of my college professors has been a huge help to me, to some of the customers coming alongside me. So it's definitely has been probably 6 or 8 people who've really been with me throughout the journey that have been very helpful, both emotionally and for advice on each stage. Because what you find is like anything, you hit plateaus. So you have to figure out finding someone who's gotten through that plateau and learning from them at each different one.
Since your dad is an entrepreneur, was it easier for you to follow his path as well?
I don't know if I really wanted to work alongside my dad, which I still get to do at Veth Group, just because we run a lot of marketing for them and we overlap a lot of ideas. We're in the same office, so it still feels like we work for the same company. I don't know if I ever had the burning desire to be an entrepreneur. I think I did want to do the family business, but it just ended up working out for me to kind of build a separate service organization since I wasn't as much of an IT geek as he is.
And did you ever doubt in yourself, that you won't be able to make your business successful?
I don't know if I ever doubted in the long-term sense. I think in the day-to-day, just like for Woodpecker or any business, I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs that you have to weather. And it's like, you really, really have to believe in what you're doing in order to weather those. And for me, we donate 10% of our profit my Christian faith's really integrated to my goals of like giving and growing in the environment we create. And that stuff I think has so much more teeth to it than like making money. But I think a lot of people, if they go into building an agency to making money, the money probably is going to go like this over time. I mean, we're in an economy in the United States right now where the government prints money without caring. Like the interest rates are incredibly low, so debt is incredibly cheap. So lots of people are spending with money they don't really have. Like that will eventually dry up, and when that happens, there's lots of business changes that you're not sure. Maybe it could help you, maybe it could hurt you in an agency business, depending. Like we're trying to bring a lot of cost efficiencies to CEOs, so it's possible that could be advantageous for us. But anytime that happens, I think that the thing that you have to really be aware of is like you've got to have a purpose, like to what's that end goal on your ship that's going to allow you to endure the storms, because I think they happen to all of us.
Yeah, you mentioned the ups and downs. What were, if you're willing to share it, what were some of the biggest downs and ups for your agency?
Yeah, so the ups I think tend to come from when the capabilities of the company level up. So when you get someone else to close a deal for the first time, or you get someone else to run a service call, or someone else to write copy, or someone else to set up Woodpecker, or whatever the thing is, like those are huge moments because you can see it being built beyond your own two hands. I think those have meant a lot more to me than any like financial milestone, just seeing the capabilities of our little team grow. I think the downs are similar. They usually have to do with people. So you usually have to be like if you have financial difficulty and have to lay off a couple people, if you have a disagreement. I've certainly had just examples where we've tried to take care of employees and then like I've maybe had them take advantage of that. Like it hasn't been an easy journey, I think, on that side. So there's both positives, like my favorite part of it's the people, but also negatives. Like it's really hard in that part of it when you try to go out on a limb for someone, it doesn't work out. Yeah. Like not anything crazy, like people taking vacation that they haven't earned or something and not telling anyone, like just things like that where they're hard when they actually happen.
Running a company is, I can only suppose, is definitely a really demanding thing. And I was wondering what drives you to keep going on?
So for me, it really is my faith in God and using business as a vehicle to honor God. So I think it very much is more like, I don't want to draw, because you're in Poland, right?
Yeah.
So Poland, so you felt World War II a lot more strongly than we did here in the United States. But I think about Winston Churchill and some of what those people did to stand up for the people in your country when they couldn't stand up for themselves. And I think for me, the realization that business can be a vehicle to change the world through that lens, like the chance when Afghan refugees started coming to the U.S., our business was able to help meet their financial needs. Or in New York City in the U.S., like we're able to give people clothing. Or there's in Thailand right now, there's some really bad refugee crises due to persecution of people groups. Like that kind of stuff, I think for me has been the largest motivator, because you realize that if you use business as a weapon to either financially or giving your marketing services away or creating jobs or whatever it might be, when you use business in that lens, it takes on the same type of feeling as I think what a Winston Churchill felt like. Like he kind of had the weight of other people's well-being on his shoulders. And I'm not at all claiming to be in the same league as Churchill, but I think I admire him in that way, and I try to have that same view of business.
So I suppose this is also the most rewarding part of owning your own business for you. so you can use it to help others.
Yeah, I really think that at the end of the day, people often become entrepreneurs because they think they want financial freedom. And agencies can provide that because they can generate cash flow and time autonomy, which together create this freedom that people talk about. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, Churchill himself said it. You make a living from what you get. You make a life from what you give. And even just like as our company's grown and you guys at Woodpecker have grown, and to see that partnership blossom, like it really becomes about the people you can serve and make a difference for, whether that is partners, employees, investors, community. Like there's so many different stakeholders whose lives you can touch. But by far, I mean, the most gratifying for me has been, we had a client who gave us $19,000 in services. We ran Woodpecker for them, and they made over $1 million in revenue. I have those examples everywhere where that kind of thing, when you step back and say, if tomorrow I closed the doors, what would I be most proud of? It would be those different things. It wouldn't necessarily be, whatever, like how fast you grew or revenue. Or I think those are really ego-driven metrics that are not actually as valuable as people think they are.
What are your professional goals for the next couple of years?
So I think for me, I love what Peter Drucker says, which is like the point of business isn't to grow, it's to survive. And I look at the opportunity we've had to make a difference in these different stakeholders' lives the last few years, and the turbulence that I feel like is probably coming economically at some point in the US. Like you just can't have government printed money go on forever. Like it just doesn't work. So I think my goal is to really shore up our team and capabilities and growth plan, not necessarily to try to build a skyscraper the next decade, but I think to really cement and stabilize some of the stuff we've already been able to do. Like I'm so proud of our team. I'd love to just keep building more stability and consistency into how we do it. Probably more focused on that than maybe trying to, get massively bigger, even though bigger is always exciting as you grow. Like I think I'm tempering that enthusiasm with a little bit more contextual awareness of where the world is right now. Maybe a gloomy answer, but that's probably the true answer.
Well, that's what it looks like right now, not only in the US, but in many countries around the world. So.
Yeah, we've had a really good run, a lot of our countries. And so I think realizing what does it look like when that environment is 10 times harder? Because you and I are both in the business of connecting people who buy from each other. And so we're very correlated to people buying from each other. So it's like I think just very aware of that. If the people aren't buying, how we both position and serve customers is going to have to be different.
You definitely cannot expect anything that the world is going to look like it's looking right now in a year or so, because you never know.
Yeah, and sometimes those things can be good. I mean, you guys at Woodpecker, you're a big player. Like it might kill off some of your littler competitors if there's a hiccup. Like it isn't necessarily all bad. It's just, you just have to be kind of, I think I like what Ray Dalio says, you have to embrace reality. I mean, because I think a lot of people ignore reality. They pretend things are better than they are because they don't want to face it. And I look at things like you guys do, like spam filters as an example. Like that game is getting increasingly hard. So I know some of what you're doing, like adding in dialing or adding in LinkedIn or these other ways that you're trying to broaden from only email, I would think are probably a reaction in part to that of, is email going to be stable like it has been? And we're in the same kind of boat. It's trying to understand where's the best return for clients. But some of these things like, testing different email accounts and servers and DK, all these different things, like that's what we're doing all day, because the worst thing you can do is pretend it's not going to change, because it is.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you see the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. What's your biggest challenge right now?
I would probably honestly say that. I think it's probably just understanding how the ecosystem is. So in general, what I see happening is you're seeing these closed feedback loops. So big tech platforms run all the communication. So you have the social media networks, the email providers, the phone providers, and they all sort of function with this basic premise that volume of communication is bad. And so, that's just, so we might be able to make $1 million for a client, but if the collateral damage of that is 18 people mark an email as spam out of 100, and you could argue, I mean, when people don't want to be hit again, we don't reach out to them again. Like, we're trying to do it in such a way that isn't certainly violating any rules or even beyond legal rules, any kind of ethical boundary. But right now, that's the state of the world, is that people are saying, no, I don't want this, but enough are saying, yes, it's outbound is still fabulously successful. And like, I mean, we have a client that's going to close a $40 million transaction on 4 months of our service. That's $2,000 a month. So you see like these asymmetries, like it's for sure works. But the challenge that I see in the future is just like you've seen with LinkedIn, they're starting to tamp down on these closed analytics loops. If people mark it as spam, then they stop you from sending. And so what they're basically saying is they're worried at Gmail and at LinkedIn and at whatever other platform that if there's automation applied to this without regulation, users will stop going to it. And that can be argued right or wrong. It's just the reality. They have the power. That's the reality. So I think what keeps me up at night right now is understanding in that world what the workarounds within all these rules will be that help you break through the noise. And so a lot of what I'm starting to focus on is things like this that can be either mailed or emailed. Like maybe they change if someone would actually hit spam or not. Like if that's a factor in it, or another factor might be how you do like DKIM and SPF, or like I'm experimenting a lot with smaller batches of sending from free account. Like, so all of this is just going to change dramatically, I think, the way that you and I get through the noise. And what it feels like to me is the people who get through the noise are going to be fabulously rewarded. But it's just getting much, much, much harder. So like every day I meet someone who buys Zoom Info, who buys Outreach, that other tool, and then who gets their entire domain sent to spam within like a week. The domain, if they're like a 10-person company, and that world we're living in and marketing is going to start existing in, I think is really, really hard. So long answer, but what keeps me up at night is how to really properly diagnose the root cause of that problem and understand what to do about it.
Yeah, you know that I like your creative approach to outreach, and the poster you showed, I think I saw on your LinkedIn that you just kind of posted it somewhere where the prospect works.
Shutterfly, yeah, mail it via Shutterfly.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the whole idea, is that costs $10. So if you think about our partnering with Woodpecker, our cost to clients to get really VP, director, et cetera meetings is something like $150 to $200 a meeting, which is phenomenal compared to the old world where phone dialing might have been $500, $700, $1,000 a meeting. So the Shutterfly packages are, the actual mail component costs about $10 a piece. So if we could find something where our effort plus that, like I'm trying to figure out how to keep the cost per meeting low, because the meetings are for sure working. But yeah, that is kind of the world we're stepping into, is you've got to figure out, and I feel like it's much more like spy espionage than it is like marketing, because in reality the end user that wants to be reached with this message isn't actually the one stopping it. Like people wouldn't do it if it didn't work. It's the platforms are stopping it because they don't want to lose the people that don't want it. And that, that's complicating things, to say the least.
One more question I wanted to ask you is about the best piece of advice that you ever got that was related to your business.
Yeah. So there's so many wonderful pieces of advice. If I could talk from a life advice perspective, I definitely talk about faith in the Bible and things. I think from a business perspective, in that vein, the best advice I think that I have ever gotten is probably, at a high level, I would say, is probably that idea from Ray Dalio of you have to embrace reality as it is. And 99% of people look at reality as they want it to be. And so I'll give you an example. Like you talk to entrepreneurs all the time, and they'll say something to the effect of, I want to be a $10 million company. I know the market's there. Like, we're going to go buy a bunch of X's and go, and they've never like validated or tested that hypothesis, and it's overly optimistic. Like, and I think something my dad's taught me, but Dalio's book really crystallizes a lot of the lessons my dad's taught me, I think, is that idea of like, you have to look at things as they are. You don't want to see them as worse than they are, but you can't see them as better than they are. And once you embrace reality as it is, like the spam filters are a great example. We have to embrace the fact, you and I, that right now buying fake domains on GoDaddy still gets a 40% open rate. Like that may not exist in 10 years. It might go longer, but eventually that's probably not going to work. So the overly optimistic me just acts like it's not going to change or doesn't think about it because I don't want to. The pessimist, doesn't even start an agency because they think it's impossible and they don't have enough confidence in themselves. But somewhere in the middle of that needs to be us two to say, no, reality's hard, but there's probably a way around it. And I just think where most people go wrong is they don't genuinely embrace their failures as learning opportunities to say, like, no one's responding to my email. They still act like it's a problem with the market. It's like the market's not going to change. Like, you have to change. And so I think if I've learned anything, it's you have to take these failures, face them head on, even though it's emotionally painful, whether it's a hiring failure, a marketing failure, a financial failure, or whatever it is, and say, how does this machine actually work? And one of my favorite things my dad always said to us growing up was, if someone else can put a man on the moon, so can you. The idea was like, don't assume other people are smarter than you. Don't let other people outwork you. Like, you have every capability they have if you're a living, breathing human. But I think hand in hand with that is this idea that, like, you have to go at how the machine actually works. It's like, to give you like a real example, like I was testing Outlook accounts this morning, like Miles@Outlook.com. Like not a domain, just like, so I sent 40 emails, and sending 40 emails triggered something that it, like, for whatever reason, that my account had been hacked and basically turned off the account. Sending 40 like marketing emails, like cadenced emails in Outlook. So the question there is like, okay, if that happened, like, what actually is happening in that like system that's allowing that to happen? So like for example, that system could be caused by if you send more than 30 emails and a certain percentage get marked as spam, like now you're in a situation where Microsoft thinks you've been hacked or something and it shuts it off. Like, but maybe sending 10 emails wouldn't do that. So maybe the reality is saying, well, if I can have a lot of these things doing 10 emails each, like it doesn't trigger it for whatever and like that kind of stuff, I think, is where people go wrong, because they just don't they just either try to delegate it to other people or complain about it or ignore it.
What would you say to someone who would like to follow into your steps? Who wants to start an agency? What would be the one advice that you would give them at the beginning?
So I would say try to limit your personal expenses as much as you possibly can. In any way possible, I would just say like you want to keep your cash flow needs as low as possible. And if you're going to go down an agency business path, that's probably never going to change. It's always going to be uncertain because it's always going to be this. So it's not like being in life insurance or financial advising or some of these things. Agencies I kind of look at it, it's like skiing versus snowboarding. Easier to get up on skis, harder to stay up, harder to get up on snowboard, easier to stay up. Agencies are easier to start, harder to keep going. Some of these other things are slower to build, but harder to take down. So on the agency side, the first thing I'd say is you have to get in that habit of really planning for the worst case scenario and hedging against it. I think the second thing is like you're going to need to know how to sell. And in the best way before starting is to make sure you actually can run a Woodpecker sequence, like get data from Sales Navigator, actually get meetings, meet with them on Saturday morning, see if they're buying. Like most bad ideas can be vetted out before you commit to them. So that'd be the second thing. I think the third thing, if I give any advice, including to myself, is you have to have a why that is more than money, more than other people's opinion, more than anything. Like it has to be, and you have to be so committed to it that in these moments when you're not paid and you're burned and whatever it is that you're willing to keep pushing. Like, because for me, like the stuff we're talking about with mangling through spam filters, like it's not what I enjoy all day. Like I like being salesperson, but it's like I care enough about the mission and the journey that I'm willing to do it. And I'm not constantly questioning it. I think the more you can have that crystal clear purpose that you're not constantly questioning, the higher likelihood you can persist. And the agency space is billions of dollars. Like if you persist, you will be okay. It's just like I think the 99% of people don't have a why strong enough to have them persist is probably what I'd say.
That's a great answer. And one final question that I've got for you is that professionally you are an expert in sales, but what are you an expert in privately after hours?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of experts that I would say are much better at selling than me, but after hours I would probably, music's probably the biggest like hobby. So I play a lot of piano and guitar, and I hang out with my wife a lot. So if I want to be an expert in anything, it's probably hanging out with her on top of doing Veth Group.
That's a great field of expertise.
Yeah. Still trying to become an expert, exactly.
I remember also one time I saw on your LinkedIn that you promised one of your prospects that if she agreed to a meeting with you, you will sing her a song, and I remember you did it. So this is just a very random memory that just popped into my head when you said about the music.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I actually have a guitar here in the office. So yeah, I often do things like that in prospecting. Because I think it's all about being different and trying to break through the noise. But yeah, it's fun. I know you bring the same kind of enthusiasm for this. It's hard work.
Yeah, exactly.